Hey everyone, and welcome back to Daughter's Dialogue. I'm Gianna, and today we're going to be talking about some classic books that are worth reading and aren't just for English class, because they're actually good reads, okay? I'm going to talk about five that I think everyone should try at least once, so let's get into it. Okay, one of my favorite classics that I think a lot of people would agree on is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I am a lover of gothic novels, so this one really is one of my favorites. This novel's about Dorian, who's a young guy who's got it all, looks, charm, and he's just kind of obsessed with staying young and beautiful forever. And he sort of gets his wish. Sort of. 'Cause all his bad actions and his aging and his corruption start showing up in this creepy portrait of himself by his gay lover. Not explicitly said. This is kind of my own, they're definitely gay lovers, but it's not said. But we all know the kind of man Oscar Wilde was, so believe what you will. Anyways, what I love about the story is that it doesn't really shy away from the dark side of beauty and pleasure, and Oscar Wilde really dives into what happens when you let yourself get totally consumed by vanity and indulgence, which I think is super topical, especially today. Like, this book is old and it's still relevant. Even more now, I think, than then. Like, it really. Honestly, more people should read this book, especially with the way that society is today. This is very relevant, okay? Because Dorian does really messed up things because he thinks that there's no consequences for him, and it's just a big, twisted, cautionary tale about what can happen if you live only for yourself and ignore morals. Also, Oscar Wilde has really good humor, and he really makes you think about the cost of living a completely hedonistic life while also making you chuckle with all the dialogue. Like it's actually funny but morbid, which I think is a great combination. And I remember reading it and I was fascinated, but also kind of freaked out, which is exactly how I want to feel when I read a book. So, and he really makes you question how far you would go if no one ever knew about your mistakes, because that's kind of what Dorian thinks is happening. And his Dorian story is really captivating because it's dark, twisted, and a bit too real. So that would be my number one. Like, that book is worth reading. That is a classic worth reading, okay? The next one is one of the only books that has made me cry. I do not cry easily from books, but Of Mice of Men by John Steinbeck did make me cry, okay? This book is very short, so if you're looking to get into classics, or maybe just need a filler book to get you out of a book slump, I think that this book is great. A good short book that you can get into quickly, it ends quickly, and it's a great story. It's not an intimidating classic. Okay, it's set during the Great Depression, and it follows two guys, George and Lenny, who are, I don't know, they're just trying to scrape by, honestly. And Lenny has a really gentle nature, but he doesn't realize his own strength. And George is kind of like his protector. They're dreaming of owning like their own piece of land and finally being free from their tough lives. And one thing I think the best thing about the book is how it shows their friendship and loyalty, and also how cruel the world is. And you kind of see Lenny's innocence and his dreams clash so hard with the reality around him, and it's heartbreaking. That's why I cried multiple times in this book. And Simek shows how the characters are really trapped by their own circumstances. Yeah, it was an emotional punch to me. Yeah, I had a lot of empathy for Lenny. Let's just say if you read the book, I and you have emotions, I'm sure you will cry, okay? To be honest. If you have emotions, you will cry. I really felt for like George and Lenny. Yeah, it's kind of about like the reality of the world, and it's not kind to people who don't fit in. And it's a really powerful novel, even though it's very simple. Okay, the next one is a little bit more philosophical, metaphorical, one that makes you think a little bit more, a little weird. It's The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. Okay, this book is bizarre. Just a warning, okay? But I love it. It's about Gregor Samsa, who just wakes up one morning and he's a giant bug. Like he goes from being a normal guy to this huge, horrifying insect. Okay? But the weird thing is, the book is more about like how everybody's reacting to him and his transformation. So the story is totally surreal, but what is really capturing is what it feels like to be an outsider or someone who just doesn't fit in. And his family very quickly turns on him, even though they used to support him, but now he's a giant bug. And they're not really vibing with that. Kaka kind of just shows us how brutal people can be when they don't understand something or someone. And it's an intense look at alienation and the pressure to conform. I think there's a lot of different, not conspiracies, but different theories about is it a metaphor or is it literal? I personally, like, is he literally a bug or is it a metaphor for something bigger? I think it's a metaphor personally. I don't think he was literally a bug. I think it's a metaphor for disability and him being different and his family kind of neglecting and not understanding that he's different. Whatever. I don't think it's literal. But in short, this book kind of sticks with you and it definitely makes you think, and it's a little bit eerie. So, and it's short. So if you want something a little bit more interesting but short, that'll make you feel smart when you finish reading it, which is that's really what you want when you read a classic, right? You want to feel smart. It's a really good book. Anyways, the next book is definitely longer. It's Dracula. Okay, this is the vampire novel. It started it all, okay? So, Bram Stoker. By the way, I read this book, I think, for the first time in 7th grade, required reading in an English class. And since then, I think I've read this book 4 times because I love it so much. Okay, it's definitely not my favorite book, which you might be like, what the fuck? Why have you read it so many times then? I don't know, just because I love it. So, Bram Stoker takes us into like a creepy gothic world with Jonathan Harker, Mina, and infamous Count Dracula himself. The story mixes journal entries, letters, and different perspectives, which I love. I love different perspectives. And it just builds this creepy, atmospheric story of Dracula's attempt to like spread his influence beyond Transylvania. But it's fascinating. It's not just about vampires, okay? If you want to think about it from a more, I don't know, we're analyzing this piece of literature, it's more about like fear of the unknown, cultural clashes, but really it's just cool vampires. Dracula is this foreign, mysterious figure who represents all fears of what's different, and he's charming, yet terrifying. And Stoker really plays at like the allure of danger. The allure of danger, okay? And the pacing of this book and the mystery makes it a really suspenseful read. And I love suspense. But from the start, the first time I read the book, I was really sucked into the story. That's not a pun on vampirism. Okay? It's not a pun. That happened totally accidentally. Okay? Disregard that. But it has a lot of suspense and a creepy setting and a villain who's charming and horrifying. And if you're into anything gothic or supernatural, it's a must read. It's a must read, to be honest. Just like culturally, you have to read Dracula. And also, if you're gonna get into that, read Carmilla too. That's not even one of the books I was gonna mention, but that's a sapphic, vampiric, short read. Okay, we're gonna combine those two. You have to read Dracula and Carmilla, okay? The next one is really different from the rest of the books that I feel like the rest of these are kind of morbid and thought-provoking. My final one is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. definitely the most lighthearted. It's still full of adventure and depth, I guess, but it definitely completely different vibe than the rest of the books that I mentioned. Anyways, J.R.R. Tolkien is the world builder. And if you like world building, you will love this because I I am a world building enthusiast. Okay, I love maps. I just like going into different worlds and escapism, whatever. But and I don't really gravitate towards fantasy, which is weird because like I like that kind of world building and you think, oh yeah, you would like fantasy. But I really don't read that much fantasy except this book, I think is one of the only fantasy books I've enjoyed other than like Harry Potter and The Hunger Games, whatever. But I'll just kind of recap what this book is actually about. It's about Bilbo Baggins, who is the Hobbit. He just wants to live a quiet life, man. Very relatable. But then he gets roped into like this epic journey with dwarves and a dragon. But the main thing that I love about The Hobbit is how Tolkien like takes a simple, relatable character and then puts into like these crazy situations where he has to be like this brave, completely different person. Honestly, Bilbo is a total underdog and he rises to the occasion, okay? And there's something so universal about his journey. I embrace the unexpected just like Bilbo. Anyways, but reading this book feels like going on an adventure. It's like a fantasy where you just like can close your eyes and you're immersed completely. It's one of the classics that's fun, but also meaningful. Those are my top 5 classics that are worth the read. Gothic horror, deep emotion, an epic Bilbo Baggins fantasy journey. I hope this list gave you some ideas for your next read. And if you're hesitant about classics, I would give one of these a shot. Let me know if you've read any of these, or if there's one you think I should read. And thanks for hanging out with me on Daughter's Dialogue, and I'll see you next time. Stay curious, keep reading, and see you in the next episode.